Welcome to Nite Callers Archives. Before Nite Callers became a vidcast on YouTube and Facebook, it was a live call-in show on Blog Talk Radio. We did things a little differently back then. It was a different time in the Bigfoot world. There were only a few podcasts, and Bigfoot was still taboo to talk about. We didn't have the TV shows, hundreds of Bigfoot groups and conferences, or funny memes that we have now. They were different times, folks. We've had many amazing hosts and knowledgeable guests over the years that helped get the Bigfoot community to where it is now. We hope you enjoy these older shows, as they are a phenomenal source of information and good times. If you hear a guest or host that you would love to see back on the current Nite Callers, please drop a comment. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. It is beautiful weather here today in East Texas. My name is Laurie Phillips, and I'm here with my co-host, Tennessee Cherokee, and also my daughter, Laurie, is helping out with the switchboard. I'm flying blind tonight. I have no switchboard at all. I don't even have Yahoo Messenger. So you people that are out there trying to PM me right now, I'm not ignoring you. Is it still storming over there, Tennessee, where you're at?
Well, hello, everybody. It has stormed for 2 days, and I was in the middle of a conversation with Laurie about an hour ago, and this big bolt of lightning hit something close around here. I don't know what it was, but it killed our conversation. And,
I thought you hung up on me. I thought,
no, I didn't.
You should have heard what I was saying about you.
Well.
Now you know.
Anyway, the sun came out about 15 minutes later, so it's the ditches out there were to the top brim full of water, and the birds were out there all digging worms up, so maybe it's over with.
I hope so. I know we had rain for 2 days. I was about to climb the walls, cabin fever. I'm not kidding. And then today I woke up and it was beautiful. Blue skies, beautiful breeze, bright sunshine. And I just wanted to, if it hadn't been so wet, I would have went out there and laid on the ground and just basked in the sunshine.
Laurie's my weather vane because we talk nearly every day, and she lives about 500 miles west of me, and whatever her weather is today is my weather tomorrow. So
yeah,
I have a sunny day according to her tomorrow.
Yeah, see, and the way it works though, when I am cooped up in this house and I want somebody to talk to, he has beautiful weather and he's outside, and then when he has crummy weather and want somebody to talk to, I'm outside. It's not good, you know.
It's always opposite.
Yeah. I don't know about all of you out there if you had a chance to listen to the Easter show, but it was really kind of a strange show because nothing wanted to work right. It was almost like we had the devil after us that night, but it still ended up being a really good show. We were forced to talk a lot more than we were really ready to. But when it comes to matters of the Lord, when he wants you to talk, he wants you to talk. So we did for 2 hours. We had 2 gospel songs, and we were supposed to have 2 hours of gospel music. So, but being an unusual show and not on our usual genre, it really did well in our downloads. I wanted to say that it's probably 450 downloads, which is phenomenal. We were glad. That means a lot of people listened to the show and maybe opened up their hearts and eyes or something. But I did want to say that next week we are going to have, their names are Dwayne Graves and Justin Meeks, and they're co-directors of a movie called The Wild Man of the Navidad, and it was filmed in Sublime, Texas, where it's based on a true story. Whether the movie actually follows the true story or not, but I think it's based on it. These are the same people that did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So it's going to run along the same. I'm not going to say it's the same because I haven't seen the movie. Anyway, we're going to have them on next Sunday, and they're going to tell us about the movie, tell us about the man who this movie was based on, and other things. Tennessee, you have anything else to say before I start telling our people out there about our guest today?
No, I don't guess I do, Laurie. I wanted to thank Lauren again for all of her help.
Without a doubt.
And just thankful that we're all able to be here.
No problem. I tell you what, though, truthfully, I don't know what I'd do without Lauren, because in the last 3 weeks I've had trouble with this internet on a Sunday, and I don't know if it's HughesNet or what. I was telling Lauren earlier, maybe there's a big, huge asteroid just spinning its way to Earth right now, and only HughesNet customers know about it. So then she goes, Mom!
Morbid.
I'd like to say something here about not necessarily anything to do with HughesNet or the lack of bandwidth thereof, but I have a fiber optic cable service that I get my internet service over. It's Charter Communications. They're number 3 in the nation. They were founded by one of the guys that was on the startup crew of Microsoft. I'd just like to say if any of you ever get a chance to try their products, they are outstanding. But it just downloads photos super quick, and hardly ever is there an outage. So I have to give them credit where credit's due, and they've never failed me yet.
Well, if you get free internet now, I want to know. Okay, today we have Todd Partain. He is I don't know if you would call him an amateur anymore, but he considers himself an amateur documentarian. He got himself a really great camera, and we'll find out how much experience he had before he got this camera. But he put together this documentary, Eyes in the Dark. It's 50 minutes long. He put it together on a shoestring. Basically, they threw everything they had, him and his wife and kids, and they threw everything they had into it and produced a product that was just remarkable. When I saw it, I said, this man has a gift. He definitely needs to continue doing what he's doing because he is a natural. When you watch it, you will see he went from scene to scene gracefully. He edited parts of it very well. He put it all together, and it even has an extra part in it about his family. It has his children talking, which is just precious. He has a gentleman in there that's a friend of his that volunteered to do the Bigfoot part in the reenactments, and he is just incredible. And I was very happy to see that part in there because it really brought to home that this man is a family man, and he's just a regular guy out here who has a gift. And I encourage all of you to go to, well, we've got to get the websites up, and I have not able to do that right now. But do you have it? Great. Go there and order this and support this man because he is great at what he does. And now I would like to bring on Todd. Todd, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Well, we're doing really, really good.
Glad to have you, Todd. Thanks for coming.
I'm a little nervous. You guys kind of built me up there a little bit. And I'm
just relax. You'll do fine.
Todd, I was very impressed. I know you beat yourself up over it. You say, "Wow, this isn't," and you critique it and everything else, and your worst critic. But looking
I've got a few critics on the internet too, but that's okay.
Oh, really?
I think a lot of folks. Yeah, well, there's a few folks that didn't like it. I think they were expecting something. They were suspecting a horror movie. I think a lot of people were. I guess it wasn't clear enough that it was a documentary film and that it was made by like an average Joe and it's not something out of Hollywood. And I think a lot of people were expecting that, and that's not what it is. It's just mostly made with stuff I built in my garage and stuff we just kind of did out in the woods. And the interviews that we got, to me the best point of the whole film is the fact that we had some really good interviews with some really. That's what makes it a great, because I got lucky. I got lucky enough to talk to some really fantastic people who are really movers and shakers. And I mean, people who just go out there and do work all the time. We're completely and incredibly. And since then, I've met more people who are just amazing individuals who are just so dedicated. They go out every chance they get and do research, and just the level of dedication there is just way beyond anything that I have to just about anything. But it was a fascinating journey to make the film, and it was kind of spurred by events that happened in my own childhood.
Okay,
and,
let's begin there. You were 5 years old.
Yes, ma'am. I was about 5 years old, and I live here in Bossier City, Louisiana, and always have. And we would visit my grandfather, who lived, who actually, he was sort of the chief of police of a little town called Glenwood up in Arkansas. And we would go visit him about probably every other weekend to go, check on him and everything. And he actually had gone and bought himself a little piece of land on the side of a mountain above the Caddo River in a little place called Caddo Gap, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Glenwood. And he had put this trailer house on the side of the mountain. And so we were going up to see his new place, and I remember my dad had to follow him up to where it was. It was just sort of very secluded. There was like an old shack, I guess a couple of 100 feet or whatever away. And I don't remember too many details, because of my age, but it was the events of that night that really burned into my memory.
I bet. Go ahead.
Pretty remarkable. But what happened was the thing that my grandfather would do is every time my dad and us came into town, he would deputize my dad for the night, and they would go out on patrol and sort of hang out with each other. And that particular night, that left us kids, me and my older brother and my younger brother, along with my mom and my grandmother. We were doing the normal things that you do, eating our SpaghettiOs or whatnot, when my older brother, who was Mr. Tough Guy his whole life, he's deceased now, but he was always, from my earliest memories, he was Mr. Tough Guy, not afraid of anything, not scared of anything. And saw him sitting on the couch with his hand up over his eyes like he was trying to shield his eyes from the sun or something. And
this was after dark.
Yeah, this is dark, has just gotten dark. So he's got his eyes up over, he's got his hand up over his eyes, trying to shield, like he's shielding them from the sun or something. And so finally, he was questioned as to why he had done this. And he was so scared that you could hear in his voice just how terrified he was. And he was probably about 7 years old at the time. It was shocking to me just to hear how scared he was, because I don't know if I'd ever heard him sound that way before or since that night. He said that there was a pair of eyes looking at him through the window. Something was looking at him through the window in the door. The window in that door was one of the old Jalous crank open, like little louvers type window that they used to put in the old trailer houses and whatnot. And
I remember those well.
Yeah, the glass, the panes of the glass were obscured. They were frosted or whatnot, but the top pane was not. It was clear. And and the
it's replaced.
yeah, it had been apparently broken at one point and replaced. And so whatever was looking in through that little piece of louvered glass, and so my mother, in an effort to keep everyone calm and everything, kind of remarked, "Oh, that's just your imagination, and there's not really anything out there." So she goes up there to take a look, and she looks out, and I seem to recall she flipped on the porch light or whatnot, and looked out, and I saw her visibly recoil from the window. And of course, that made me even more terrified, because you see a parent, let out a gasp and back away from something. You're like, okay, there's something out there that's not good. And then she goes over, and with my grandmother, they're pretty animated, but they're trying to keep their voices down. And so they immediately start searching around. And what I found out later is they were looking for a gun. They were looking for a gun and some bullets. During the course of their little conversation, I overheard the word Sasquatch. That was pretty disturbing too. And so,
did you know what it was at 5 years old?
I had some idea. I had heard a little bit about, stuff. I think I'd heard the word before, but in my mind, I thought it was probably the devil outside. Because I was 5 years old. So I'm like, oh God, the devil's out there. And so I'm terrified. I'm scared to even look at the window. I wouldn't even look. So they find a shotgun. They can't find any shells for it. They found bullets for a revolver, but that was my grandfather's revolver, and he had it with him because he was on patrol.
Isn't that the way it goes?
It's always like that, yeah. So
you got a gun, but you got rounds for a different gun.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So they're trying to find these shells for the shotgun, and they can't find the shells for the shotgun. So my mother takes a blanket, and using clothespins or something, she manages to wedge them into the door frame around the door and get this blanket hung over the door. Well, up to that point, we had not heard a sound, any kind of sound outside at all. And after she hung
Todd, I have to ask you a question real quick. Could you lock those doors?
Well, the front door would lock. But the back door, the door that actually was in the kitchen, where we were sitting at the table, it was broken. It would not lock.
Oh Lord!
It would close and latch, but it would not lock. So if you turn the doorknob, the door would come open. So we were there. So here we were, and she covers the window with the blanket. And that's when we start hearing a racket outside. And there are screams and grunts and growls. And something's hitting the side of the trailer, and just sounds like something slapping the side of the trailer and slapping the roof of the trailer. Of course, I wasn't terrified enough. I was very terrified at that point. And whatever it was, it works its way.
I know it's not funny, but
oh yeah, it was horrifying, and it works its way down the side of the trailer, and we don't hear anything for a minute, and then we realize it's on the other side, and it's coming up the side toward the door that doesn't lock, and so it works its way up the side, and the thing that really stupefies me now is the fact that with all that racket, with all the places where it hit the trailer and everything, it never hit a window. That's the thing that I don't get, is why did it not hit a window? Unless, in fact, what it was doing was trying to scare us. If it really wanted to get to us, it could easily have broken a window. And so that's what was bizarre. But anyway, it did come to the back door. I did remember it grabbed the doorknob and pulled on the doorknob. If I remember correctly, it actually, later when my mom went to check that door later, or when they got home later, they went to check the door, and when they pulled on the doorknob on the inside, it came off.
Oh,
no.
The outside doorknob had been pulled off, or knocked off, or something. I'm not sure. My memory about that's not clear, but I do remember being horrified, and I remember that everyone was horrified, and that what was going on was definitely out of the norm and not really explainable. Well, the very next morning, we normally stayed Friday Friday night and Saturday night, and would head home Sunday. But we left that very next Saturday morning.
So you all stayed in the trailer the entire night?
Yes, we stayed there, and finally my grandfather and my father came home, and they saw that we were just in this horrible state. So they went outside with the flashlights and their guns and found footprints. And my dad says to this day, not tracks, footprints.
Mm-hmm.
And
my God.
tell you, they were human footprints, and that's what I remember. Because the next morning when we left, I remembered going out and the porch, the little porch stoop type setup outside the front door, had been smashed through. The bottom step had been smashed through. And
so you think that was by the sheer weight?
I think it got angry and stomped. That's what I believe. Because it was standing on that before. And
when it was looking in.
Yeah, it was standing there before and never made a sound. It was so stealthy and so quiet that it was able to get up to the window and look through the window, and we never heard a thing. It was only because my older brother happened to look up and see it, see the eyes. Because what he saw was the eye shine. My mother actually, when she turned the light on and looked out, she saw its face, and I've tried many times to get her to to give me a detailed description, and the best I can get out of her is it looked like a big hairy hippie with no clothes on, just hair. And that's as good of an explanation as I can get out of my mother.
Yeah, your mother and grandmother are two very brave women.
Yes, they are.
And I got a chance to see your mother in your documentary, and your father. They both seem like very good, down-to-earth folks. Your grandmother and your mother had to have been very, very brave to not have lost their cool in front of you kids and tried to tamp everything down to keep from everybody freaking completely out.
Oh yeah, and I mean, for what it was worth, they did a good job of that, but of course it didn't work. Because of the situation. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot more that they could have done, but they did do, all the right things. But it was pretty terrifying.
I don't know that I could have played it so cool under the circumstances. Now, me, I know what I know and do what I do, and if I was in the situation, I remember the very first time I ever saw one. After that, I was just completely freaked out. And had I had children there at the house, I probably would have had them in the bathtub, been on the phone, 911. I don't know I would have handled it as maturely as they did. They handled it very maturely.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, they did a great job. I mean,
yes, they did.
They tried their hardest to keep us from getting too upset, which we ended up getting way upset anyway. We ended up hiding under the table there for a while. Until finally, it went away, and it apparently it needed an object. It needed some kind of victim for its rage, I guess. And someone has mentioned to me in the past couple of years that, man, you turned off his TV show. That's why he was mad. Well,
oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking, when your mother covered that glass up, that enraged it.
Yeah,
because it took away its way to view you.
Either he realized at that point that we knew he was out there, or he or she, or possibly, had decided that, okay, well, it's time to make a display, or that individual probably did get upset that they were no longer able to look inside and see what they... And so there was this shack that was a little ways away. It also attacked this shack and just tore it to pieces, from what I understand. I didn't ever get a chance to see the shack or whatever, but it's apparently it wanted to make a display that it could have gotten to us had it wanted to. That's pretty much my experience. And the next day when we left, I saw the footprint. I saw a single footprint that was about probably 4 feet away from the base of the stair that was broken. And it looked to me, I actually thought when I first saw that footprint that it must have been my grandfather and my dad walking around out there with no shoes on because it was just this big human footprint. It didn't occur to me that this was the footprint of whatever had been out there that night. And it was my older brother that mentioned to me, he goes, "Oh yeah, don't touch the footprint because Papa's going to take a picture of it." Being 5 years old, I grabbed a stick and obscured the footprint. So,
no, you didn't.
Yes, I did. I was 5 years old. You know, I had to get back at it somehow. But so yeah, that was terrible, and it would have been a great cast because it was such a
you erased it.
You know, I look back now and I'm like, I can't believe I did that, and I was like, oh, that would have been such a great cast. But looking back now, that footprint was way too big to have been an ordinary human. You know, unless it's one of your, you know, the guy would have to have been like a huge NBA basketball player or something, have feet like that. I mean, it's just, you have to be Shaq.
Todd, did your grandfather or grandmother ever have any inclination that these Sasquatch were around there before this happened?
No, and they didn't get any afterwards because my grandfather moved right after that.
Oh.
Moved them out of there. And
have you been back to the area since?
You know what? I can't even find the spot. I know it was on a mountain above the Caddo River. That's the only thing I know for certain, is that we were on a mountainside above the Caddo River. That's the only thing I know. And to this day, I mean, I've been up there several times to Caddo Gap to go canoeing. It's sort of the canoeing, kayaking mecca of this area. And I've been up there several times, and I've not been able to, you know, it was just impossible for me to figure out where it was. I'm sure that the area that he was in is probably now a much more populated area, and I'm sure these individuals have given up their stake, so to speak, and probably moved into a more remote area.
Probably.
But I think we were trespassing on its territory, and it was curious at first.
I think it might have been partially that, but I think that it really just wanted to look at you children.
Yeah, that seems to be something that is very fascinating. I would hope that that's a good thing, because you know some of the Native American and First Nations legends speak of, you know, cannibalism,
children being kidnapped and
children being eaten. Yeah, but I think it might be more of a. I think that what you're dealing with is, I would think that these creatures would have a very strong aversion to killing a human being unless they felt that they were in imminent danger.
I think that's true. We would hear more about it.
Yeah. Well, I think that they're not gonna do that unless they're in a position where they know they can do it and get away with it. And dispose of the threat in such a way that, because they're smart enough to know that, I believe they're smart enough to know that that if they kill one of us, that's going to bring more of us looking for that person. And I think that they take great pains and expend quite a bit of energy avoiding us and avoiding too much conflict with us, which is why I think they have such a very elaborate system of intimidation that they use against us.
I think you're right about that. But, you know, if they hurt a human and the human does survive and tells of it, well, what happens next? You have.
Well, it's just going to bring retribution back on them, you know, and I think they're smart enough to know that.
They've learned quite a bit. I'm actually working on a second documentary with some very, very highly dedicated individuals that I've met, men that I'm proud just to be in the presence of because of their dedication and all the things that they've done just while I'm with them. They're just amazing individuals, and I really don't know if they want me to mention their names, so I'm not going to mention their names. Because they're not really publicity seekers, really. They spend their own money. They actually fabricate these mechanical devices for monitoring in their own homes and garages. They build equipment. They deploy equipment. And they go out and do all this research that is so detailed and so, just the level of dedication that's taken there, it amazes me. It never ceases to amaze me. And I really hope that I can spend more time with these guys in the future. But I am currently working on another documentary film. Currently, I'm calling it the Tree People of the Forest People. And I hope to do something a little bit more entertaining and a little bit more in-depth as to the entire, not just the culture, not just the beings themselves, but the whole culture and what happens when you have seen one and you dedicate a part of your life to learning more about them. Because they, a lot of us have gone through that. I mean, when you've had a sighting, as you know, it changes you.
Yes, it does.
And it changes
Hey,
the way
Todd?
you look at the world. Yes.
Mike Hall tells me in the chat room here that it's okay to talk about them guys.
Okay, fantastic. Well, then I do want to mention some names. There's some really great guys out there. Scott Kessler, Lonnie Rabelais, Bruce Dinsford, Bob Dinsford, and, of course, Mike himself. And just the list really goes on and on and on. And if I'm leaving anybody out, I'm sure they'll Lonnie and Scott, and I mean, just these guys are amazing. They're amazing individuals, and I owe so much to them just for letting me be, present with them when they're doing what they do, because it's always a huge treat for me. And I've even brought my kids out and to try to expose them to a little bit of what what is going on out here in the woods. And there's just, I don't know how to say it, they're just remarkable researchers and remarkable individuals. Mike's kind of our door knocker man. He goes around and finds the people who have what they believe is activity on their land, sets up things, and we've got, Bruce.
He's really good at that, too. I mean,
yeah, he's good. He's really good. He's a PR man. He's a public relations individual. He does that really well.
Anybody that can go up and knock on a door and say, ma'am, sorry to bother you, but have you seen a Bigfoot on your place?
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do. That's not an easy thing to approach somebody about. It's one thing if you're at a Bigfoot convention and you can walk around and go, hey, tell me your story. But it's another thing to walk up to a stranger's door, not knowing what you're going to face, and going, you know what? My name is so, this is who I am, and this is what I'm about, and we know that there's possible activity in this area, and we were just wondering if you, think anything's going on. And he sets up things with these folks and gets permission to go on their land, and then this whole crew of just amazing individuals comes out and does their work, and they do it in relative obscurity without any, they're not making any money, they're not getting famous, they're not, they're not getting any particular reward except the satisfaction of knowing when they get something on, get an audio return, that they're making some kind of progress. And that huge volume of information that they compile, I think, will become very important one day. I think it's going to be very important in understanding the behavior patterns of these creatures.
Exactly. You wonder why you're doing it. I mean, a lot of us do it because we love it. We love doing it. But then sometimes when we have all of this stuff, I have boxes and boxes and boxes of audio recordings, and you wonder, what's it all going to be? Is it ever going to be important? But I think it will. And not only that, but just going out in the field like they do and like I do and others do, we learn. We learn a lot about behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't shake a stick at that, because even with the body, you can't determine behavior. You can't determine what makes them angry, what makes them passive, how they move towards humans, how they move away from humans, what you do or what you don't do, or what you call or don't call. And there's so many variables that the only way you can know what they're going to do, and then you throw in they're different in different states. You know, so you've got a huge secret data bank out there full of all, there's all these researchers, or if you want to call them researchers or studiers of this species that have compiled information, compiled personal knowledge and experience, and they're all just out there.
And I just want to say to anybody who's out there, whether I've ever met you or not, you know, keep up the good work, because what you're doing is important. We're not paid scientists. We're not getting funding or anything like that for the most part, but what you're doing is important.
And I'm glad that you said that, because besides it being an incredible passion, I think there's a reason why we find a passion in this. I believe that it's not just our sense of adventure, but it is our quest to learn the truth. I'm sorry, but you can't find the truth from a dead body. How much are you going? I know you can learn a lot from that, but
there will be quite a bit. I think that we will learn. We'll learn a little bit about the genetics, but truthfully,
physiology.
When it comes down to it, when it comes down to it, we need the field research, and it's not being done. You know, there's no government entity or university or whatever that's funding and backing all this. This is all out of people's hip pockets. We're spending our own money on fuel, on vehicles, on
exactly. Where are the sponsors? Where are the sponsors?
Yeah, these guys build their own equipment. The Dinsfords are amazing, and Scott and Lonnie are too. I mean, they have so impressed me of what they can build out of just things that you find around the house, that to amplify things and to. I mean, they're just amazing individuals. They're like it's like something out of James Bond what these guys do, and they do it with with stuff from Home Depot, and it's amazing to me. It never ceased to amaze me, the level of dedication that these individuals have.
You're like, what is the name of that guy? The diver?
This is exactly what they are. They're just a group of MacGyvers.
Like Bigfoot divers.
So dedicated.
Yeah.
They never cease to impress, and it is very important what they do. If you look at the Eyes in the Dark, there's an individual in there by the name of Rick Knoll, and there's a man. We all know that in this world, I say the Bigfoot world, there are a couple of individuals who are heavy self-promoters, and one of those individuals has kind of gotten himself involved in some stuff that really, the whole Georgia thing. But you've got people out there too that are not self-promoters, but who are doing work that is so important. And like I said, the Dinsfords and Scott Kessler, Lonnie Ravelate, and also Rick Knoll, in the Pacific Northwest, and then there's the Strains, and just so many people. And they're great people, and they're out there doing what they do. I got to tell you, I almost fell over when I got the interview with Rick Knoll, and he explained the process by which they went through, to figure out, to prove that yes, this type of coniferous, forest can in fact sustain a large omnivore. By picking berries and seeing how long it takes to pick enough berries to fill the stomach of a large animal.
That's right.
And
how long did it take to fill up a bucket?
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly the kind of research that has to be done. You got to figure really any environment that will support a bear, which is the majority of the United States, really. If it'll support a bear, it'll support a Sasquatch, probably a Sasquatch population. So that's something that I've always looked at as being basically you can't, because you hear a lot of people say, oh well, what would they eat? What would they how could they stay alive if they're so big in the woods? There's just not enough food out there, and that's just not true. Any hunter or fisherman who spends a lot of time outdoors will tell you there's all kind of food in the woods. It's just a matter of what will you eat and what will you not eat. But
and if you think about it, and I've heard this said many times, that they don't necessarily have the same enzymes that we do, and they can digest some things that we can't. Therefore, they may even have a wider variety of things to eat than we would if we were in the place in the same situation as they were to survive.
There are probably, a large variety of tree barks and other things that they can digest that we cannot.
Right.
But another interesting thing you were talking about earlier about how you were wondering if all the things that you've done, will ever be important. I had the really great opportunity to spend some time with some Creek Indians. I say Creek Indians, the First Nations members of the First Nations on tribal land somewhere in Oklahoma, and I learned so much from these First Nations tribal members about viewpoints and perception. And one of the things that I learned was it may not really be that important if the world knows, as long as you know.
Exactly.
It's a lot of times it's all about your personal
knowledge.
Experience as opposed to trying to prove it to the world, because that's the culture we come from, I guess, as the European, white man culture, for lack of a better term, is we feel like we always have to prove everything to our colleagues and our peers. The Native American culture is quite different. One of the things that I was told by a tribal member was that, they basically told us, they know Sasquatch exists. The only people that don't know that Sasquatch is real are white people. So it's like basically we're blinded by our own perception and our own attitude towards things. They have always
kind of like, when I first started, I went through what I call the evolution of a researcher. You start out, you first want to prove it to yourself. They exist. And then when you have proved it to yourself they exist, and you believe it, then you want to prove it to others that they exist so that you can validate yourself for believing. And then you get to the point where you realize that is a hopeless cause, because it takes a lot more to convince others than it is to convince yourself, because your eyes see, your ears see, and you know. And a lot of it is just a knowing about things. It's really, really hard to put a knowing about something on a photograph or on an audio tape or on a video clip. It's just And then you go from that point to the point where you don't care if anybody else believes you or not. You know what you know. And then from that point on, you go on your own sort of odyssey, adventure, because it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks anymore. Now it's all about your own personal growth and
it's your own path. It's the path that you follow, and
exactly
the development of your own.
Yes.
I guess the development of your own soul, if you will, is.
That is the perfect way to put it too, because that's exactly the way it is. Not very many people. Well, I think there's a lot of people out there that are in the same. But there's others, though, that have no clue what we're talking about, that I know what you're talking about. I feel that way.
And that kind of goes back to the first documentary, is I really wanted to, I was at that stage where I was like, I've got to do something, because I felt I had this thing in my past that I had always repressed. And my younger brother actually mentioned that to me, too, because when I started to talk about it and try to remember more things, he started doing the same thing, and he told me, Todd, I never realized I had repressed all that. I had, pushed it in this little corner of my mind so that I wouldn't think about it. It's amazing how strong that impulse is, especially in our culture.
How it formulates your life.
Yeah, to dismiss
look at what you're doing now. You could be doing a documentary on anything, but look what you're doing in a documentary. Look at the path that you're following. Your path was set for you with that experience.
And I see now that path has included meeting a lot of people that I would not have met otherwise. Great people, and that I am
a lot of great people in this field.
I'm lucky and fortunate in my life to just know these people. It's so amazing. And how else would I ever have have met and spent time with and broken bread with tribal members of First Nations that that help me put a lot of things in perspective about the way they look at things. It's sort of a thing where they don't need to prove it to anybody. There is a videotape somewhere that has one of these creatures on it. It is in the
casino footage? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, casino footage. And you know what? They don't care. They don't care to show it to everyone. Because they're not out to do that. They're not out to exploit the phenomenon. Their attitude is more one of protection.
I'm thankful they're that way.
Yeah, they're going to protect these beings, and if that means that no white man is going to lay eyes on that videotape ever again, well, then that's what that means. And you know what? That's really okay with me. As a matter of fact, it's very cool.
Yeah, I think so.
Very cool. If that's the way it has to be, that's the way it has to be. I'm still going to go out and do everything that I can to have another experience, because it's kind of shifted for me from trying to tell the world, hey, that it's okay to talk about this if you've seen something. It's kind of shifted from that to, you know what, I really just want to have a personal experience. I want to see one, and it's not so important to me to get a photo or video, but I just want to be there, and if I'm fortunate to have enough to have my children with me so that they can see one too, just what that would do for them and for me would just be volumes that would do that. It's not quite so important, and I'll continue to do documentary work just because I feel it's important I think there's a lot of people out there who have seen something, who have experienced something, and they're afraid to talk about it. And now with the sort of mainstream culture kind of paying more attention to that, I'm just going to do my little part to go out there and say, hey, there's a lot of people out there that have seen something, and it's okay to talk about it. And, fortunately, shows, even though some of them don't approach the subject matter really the right way, there's a lot of TV shows out there now that are working hard to do that, to put out that message that it's okay. And that's just a great thing. It's a fantastic thing.
It's becoming more accepted. You go up to someone now and say, do you believe in Bigfoot? It depends on where you live, and it also depends on those people that actually watch TV and watch Monster Quest and Weird Travels and the documentary channel and A&E and different shows like that have brought on these more open-minded programs about crypto animals and the paranormal and things like that. And I think that, and this is just my opinion, I think that our television industry is gearing people up to expose.
Yeah, there's a change occurring in the psyche of the mainstream public. And that change is going toward acceptance. People are, people still laugh and snicker, but at the same time, people are going, you know what? There really is a lot of evidence. There really is a huge compilation of tracks and cast of tracks and sighting reports, and and like Scott Harriet, who he made the comment in my documentary. He makes the comment that if only one of them is true, because they can't all be hoaxes or misperceptions. If only one is true, then that means we have a real creature out there, that there is something out there. And I think that within time it is going to happen. But
I do too.
I'm starting to wonder now
coming down to it.
If that's for the best or not. It makes me wonder.
I agree with you. I don't want it to happen. I don't know why I don't want it to happen. It just scares me. I get a knot in my stomach thinking about that happening. I like it the way it is right now. Maybe no one believes me. Maybe people think I'm crazy. I don't care. I'd rather they stay elusive, mysterious, and unknown. I don't want them to be found out. I don't know why. I don't know what will happen, actually, when that all comes about. But I have a feeling yet, I think all of us do, that it is winding down to it. Someone had mentioned on another show, I can't remember who it was, it might have been Kathy Strain, said that the Native Americans believe that when Bigfoot is discovered to be absolutely true, that we are looking at the very end of time. And that's a kind of a scary thought, too. I am glad they are sitting on that casino footage. It's in good hands.
Yeah, I think it is, too. I think they'll keep it safe. And as much as I'd love to see it and went there hoping to get a chance to see it, but that's okay, that I didn't get a chance to see it. It's okay that that they don't want to show it to everybody, especially an outsider that they don't know that well. And that's perfectly fine with me. I mean, because just to know that it's there and to have everyone, sort of acknowledge that there is such a tape, but no, we're not going to let anybody see it, that's good enough for me. That's good enough for me because, as much as I'd love to see it, it's still, they have it, it's theirs, it came to them, and they choose what to do with it.
If it's anywhere else, it'd have already been on the TV.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those things where you automatically think, if I were out there and I had my camcorder with me and I got some footage, some really good footage, that you would think you would immediately have a press release and do this and that, but I'm not so sure that that's the right path to follow. Maybe it's something that you should spend more time thinking about. The work is important that we learn about behavior patterns because I think that's going to help us study these beings.
If I had something like that, Todd, I wouldn't know who to show it to. I'd have to really think about it.
Yeah, it's something that you should really think through first of it to the world. If you do, in fact, choose to present it to the world at all.
Right.
It may be something that's not for everyone. Maybe it's just for people who do believe and who have had a sighting before, and they need their own personal validation. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of good to be a small-time documentary filmmaker, without any kind of major distribution deal or anything like that. It's kind of neat to be that way because I can kind of make my own rules. I don't answer to anyone. I can make my own decisions about what's going to happen, and if I were to get a hold of something like that, then that would be a decision that I would also factor in, is this the best thing for them? What's going to happen to them? Because their numbers are not great. They're out there, but there's not as many of them as there used to be. Because there was a time in this nation when people spent a lot of time in the forest. And people don't anymore. I mean, most people, even hunters a lot of times never stray more than about a mile from any road. And it's very unusual for people to go cross country like they did back in the the pioneer days or whatever, when you had all these trappers and hunters that basically set out on foot with their traps and their muskets or on a boat and just basically went out into the wilderness and trekked across the wilderness and spent all of their life in the wilderness. There's not a lot of people that do that anymore. And so that's kind of a good thing in a way. Our technology, in a way, has fenced us off. But our demand for lumber and wood has also kind of violated their domain.
And the oil and gas industry, don't forget
that too. But how can we change that? Because, human beings, we got to survive too.
Yep, we're consumers.
At the same time, we need to leave some space for those guys. We need to, we need to let them have a place to be and to exist. I know that's exactly the problem. Is one of the things that I've heard, and I haven't had a chance to sit down with this tribal elder yet and get an interview with him, but it was relayed to me through one of his relatives. One of the things that he wanted to explain is that their time is coming to an end in this world, and there's a new awareness that's happening because their time is coming to an end, and that really makes me sad because
me too.
They're magnificent creatures. They really are. I mean, just to know that a hominid, a humanoid type creature, can exist in the wilderness the way they do, with an intelligence level that has to be at least equal to our own and superior to our own when it comes to being, in the wilderness. Sasquatch can't drive a car, but when you're in the forest, when you're in their living room, they are so superior to even the best human hunter, just because they're there all the time. They are adapted to their environment. They don't have to rely on weapons. They don't have to rely on fire. They don't have to rely on clothing.
Okay, you said you had some questions.
Got a couple questions here if we got time.
Sure.
Okay. The first one, I got a couple from Mike Hall, but Blue Tracker asked the first one. He says, it's more or less a statement. He says, tell Todd that I know about the creature. This creature does sneak up to you without knowing it's scary. And Mike Hall says, ask Todd about the hair samples we found, and he filmed on tribal lands in Oklahoma.
Yes, we did. We did find some hair samples. They were tested, and from what I can understand, the test, they were not able to identify them positively as any other animal. So that's where it kind of goes with me. I've read as much of it as I can, and it seemed to me to be inconclusive, but it was very fascinating. There's just the length of the hairs that we found.
How long were they?
They were usually from about 5 to 8 inches in length, I would say, probably. They were all quite long hairs. And
how would you describe them?
They appeared at first to be dark in color. We found them. We found them twisted into. It looked as though something had twisted this young fir tree, had taken it and twisted the branches, and the hairs were wrapped into these branches and into burrs. And it was remarkable the way we discovered them, and the hairs were very dark on appearance, but then when you looked at them in the right light, then they appeared to be red. And that was very interesting. And they were pulled out by the root. They were not cut hairs. They were not artificial material.
So the root was intact on the hair shaft.
Yes, you could tell that the hairs had been pulled out by the root, and they were tapered. The ends were tapered, so they had not been cut. And
were they able to get any DNA off that hair root?
From what I understand, there was not enough DNA to do anything with, but that's actually quite common. You know, we live in a world where we watch CSI and we think they can take a photo and drastically increase the resolution and see things, and that's really just not a lot of stuff. You know, CSI just for most of the world. You know, the ability to get the microscopic amount of DNA, they need so much more to run the complete battery of tests that they need to run. It was an exciting find for me. We did document the find on video, and it will be in the next documentary. And yeah, I still have samples of those hairs actually here in my house.
Mike says that some of them did have skin tags on them, so some of the skin surrounding where the shaft went through, the epidermis, I guess, pulled away with it. He also says to tell you that they were out in the field this weekend, Bruce, Bob, Mike, and Dulcie.
Oh, yeah. That's fantastic.
Can you tell us what kind of camera you use?
Well, I use this old XL1 as a Canon. It's an older camera. It's one I actually purchased several years ago, back in the 90s, to shoot wedding videos with. And I gave up doing that. I went to work for a telecommunications company. I'm a lineman now and I spend most of my time climbing telephone poles and trying to get people's phone service to work correctly. And so it freed that equipment up, because I had just kind of stuck it in a corner and hadn't done anything with it in years. And my wife was kind of after me to sell it or something, get rid of it. And I said, I got this equipment sitting around. I don't have anything to do with it.
Is that the big one that's on the back of the jacket for the movie?
No, that is actually a that is actually a film camera. And that is an Aeroflex BL. And
that's a cool-looking contraption there.
That's the one that you made the video with, right?
There are some scenes that are shot on 16 millimeter film. There are some scenes that are shot on Super 8 film. And very little of that is actually in the actual movie itself because film is so prohibitively expensive and whatnot that the majority of it is shot on video, but some of the reenactments were shot on film. Look.
The sequence on there where you were filming down in the swamp where the cypress trees were.
Oh yes.
What camera was used there?
I was using the XL1, the Canon.
That thing is really got a lot of definition.
Yeah,
that was
beautiful.
Lighted,
it did quite well.
Oh man,
it did look good.
That was Caddo Lake, and Caddo Lake is, as everyone knows, Caddo Lake is a place where a lot of strange things happen.
Oh yeah.
Not just Sasquatch related, but
that paranormal hotspot.
Yeah, it definitely.
And you noticed this, and I got to ask you this, Todd. I don't know if you've ever encountered this, but there seems to be a relation between these paranormal hotspots, burial grounds, and Bigfoot. You notice that?
There are in some occasions there are, which is quite interesting. I wouldn't be able to tell you either. It would all just be guesswork on my part.
Yeah, speculation. But I wanted to ask you about your friend that agreed to dress up in the costume, and I also wanted to ask you about the costume itself. You made it, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am. I made that in my garage, out of a pair of long john, long underwear, and a ski mask, and hair extensions, and spray glue.
You must have bought a lot of hair extensions.
Yes, ma'am, I did. And
did you have to? Well, I have to ask you this: did you go to down to the Sally's Beauty Supply and buy them, or did you order them online, or?
Walmart, actually.
I want to know what they said to you when you ordered that many.
Well, I did get some funny looks. When you go into Walmart and you clean out the hair extensions, you do tend to get some unusual looks.
Well, especially if you shaved your head bald and then went in there.
You got this 35-year-old guy going in here and just cleaning out the hair extensions. And everybody's just like, okay, well, what are you up to,
Paul, do you recall how much that outfit cost you to make yourself?
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, not much actually. Probably $70, $80.
Is that all?
Not bad for something as authentic.
It was a lot of time involved.
A lot of labor intensive.
Yeah.
A lot of time involved, yes. And just because, the hair extensions themselves were quite inexpensive, and a couple of cans of spray glue, and the ski mask I had already, and I purchased some long john thermal underwear, and that was basically the costume. The actor is what made the costume.
Your friend looks like he's a pretty big man.
Oh yeah, he's a big guy.
I bet you were eyeballing him for weeks while you was making that costume, thinking,
from the beginning, I was thinking it for him from the beginning. And because I'd already asked, man, will you be in my movie? And he's like, okay.
How big is this guy?
I would say he's well over 6 feet. I want to say he's about 6'2", 6'3".
Is that all? He looked bigger than that. He did. To me, he.
Well, I shot him from a lot of low angles to try to make him look bigger. And,
well, you did good. See, that's what I'm talking about. You are a natural at this. How did you ask him? That's what I've got to know. Because did he know that you were interested in Sasquatch?
Yeah, you have to understand the relationship I have with Tiger. You have to understand the relationship I have with Tiger. I've known Tiger since we were in elementary school. And he's always kind of been there and kind of been an acquaintance. And then later we met up again in college and got to be close friends. And it's just, it's just the kind of thing we sit around and talk about, and it just comes up, oh, hey, Tiger, will you be in my Bigfoot movie? Sure. So it's just one of those things, it's just, it wasn't like it was a difficult thing to ask, because he's a great friend, and he'd do just about anything to help me out.
Yeah, and he did, too. He was very good.
He went through a lot.
Oh, he did. He did.
Quite a bit. And because he was actually, on the day we did most of our filming of the costume, he was actually quite sick.
Really?
And didn't even tell me a whole lot about how sick he was until later. He was running a fever, and he was out there on a fairly warm day, wearing this hot costume. And I just don't know how he pulled it off. But, it did pay off for him. He's gotten a lot of action because of that costume. I don't know how to say this, but the costume has given him a little bit of fame on MySpace or whatever, and he's made very good use of that.
He's taking advantage of it.
Yeah, he's taking advantage of the little bit of fame he got from that. So.
Well, good for him.
And he's already volunteered. He's already signed himself up for the next one. So as soon as we get another costume built and I'm working.
So that one's pretty much wrecked after that.
Oh yeah, it was, and we actually sent that costume. We were requested to send it off to some folks that were doing a play up in New York City that needed a costume, and they used it for that. And after that, it was shipped to Lauren Coleman's Cryptozoology Museum, Maine. And so, as far as I know, it now rests in the hands of Lauren Coleman.
So now you have to build another one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to try to be a little bit more ambitious this time around.
I figured you would.
We're going to try to. I'm going to try to do something. One of the things I'd set out to do was to try to figure out a way to try to imitate the Patterson footage as closely as I possibly could. If you look at that footage, and actually by building this costume and shooting this documentary, I learned a lot about the Patterson footage. Sort of validated it to me. When you watch Patterson footage, you can see muscles moving.
Exactly.
Under the fur or hair or whatnot, and I can tell you that is not easy to do, unless you have a person who's fairly muscular, and you glued the hair directly to their body, because
it'd have to be a real tight fit.
Yeah, even the thinnest material, lycra, spandex, things like that, they flatten a person out.
Yes.
They tend to flatten you out and make it hard for people to see your muscles moving, especially when you add hair to the equation. So you really were dealing with a creature that was heavily muscled and quite well defined in order for you to see the muscle groups and everything moving the way they were in that footage. And I'll be honest with you, people can say what they want. I'm sure people can say this about Patterson and say that about Patterson, but I think it's real footage.
I do too.
I've always thought it was.
Because I've
never doubted it.
I tried to imitate it, and I couldn't. I've tried to imitate it, and I could not get that. I could not get the moving of the muscle groups, and I actually had to make the fur a little bit longer in my costume to hide the fact that I couldn't do that. So it was.
I want to tell you that costume looked really good. Actor, he was perfect for it.
Oh yeah, he did great in that, and depending on the way you shoot Tiger, if you get him just the right way, oh man, it was just great. But he's definitely, he helped me out so much in that. I mean, it would have been impossible to do it without him. And the cover shot of the video, Eyes in the Dark, that's just a video capture. The only alteration I did to that was to put a title on it, of course, and to put 2 red dots on the eyes, because that's actually, there was no...
That's actually Tiger?
There's no photoshopping done beyond that.
Are you serious? That's Tiger on the front?
That's Tiger in front of the moon. I opened up the iris.
Look at it.
Yeah, I opened the iris up on my camera, and we used the moonlight and the light from a street light that was nearby. And that's all it is. There's no...
That background light is a street light?
That background light is the moon. That light in the background is actually the moon over his left shoulder.
That's great.
Oh.
The light on him, the reason you can actually see him at all is because a fair distance away from us and what would have been in front of him and to my back was a street light that cast off just enough light for you to see him. And that shot worked out so perfectly. I said, that is my cover shot. That is the the cover.
You couldn't have beat that.
Yeah, so the next costume, and, you know, I've made the mistake of telling too many people about this, because now if I fail, I'm going to fail miserably. But what I'm trying to do is thank you.
I don't know how you could fail, because you've got a natural ability to do this. You're really good. But I'm serious, you really are very good at this, and I'm encouraging you to continue with it. Don't. I
only hope that I can make the next costume even better, because what we're going to try to attempt to do is I'm going to try to create sort of phony muscles connected with elastic to each other, and hopefully, if this all comes out right and works out the right way, hopefully we'll be able to see muscle groups.
You're going to try to get flexion and extension to show through there?
I'm going to try to. We're going to see how it works out. But yes, I am going to try to, you know, I'm always going to hold up everything I do to the Patterson footage. Because the Patterson, you know, which I believe is of a real creature, is the landmark. It's the standard by which I measure my work with a costume, because I got to tell you, if that is a costume on somebody, then, you know, Roger Patterson, he was missing out on a career in Hollywood.
There's no way, to me, in '67, that there wasn't enough
the materials to create something.
There weren't enough materials, and there weren't enough know-how.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Yes.
We got a caller.
Okay.
Cool.
So 903, you're on the air.
Well, just call me H.H.
Oh, hey, Mike. What's going on?
Hey, Todd. Yeah, I've been listening to the show and everything, and I told you earlier today it was going to be a great show and you were going to do good. And you haven't disappointed. And I was, some of the things that, you know, you were talking about, you know, you said you had your experience, of course, when you were 5. You've had, I know this for a fact because I was there, you've had other things happen in the field with us.
Yes.
That, you know, and including the hair find in Oklahoma, which you were there to film that.
Quite a few things happen.
Yeah, and not to embarrass you or anything, but the tree knock episode down on the Natchez River where you were asleep on the picnic table was.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up, Mike. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we want to hear about it, Todd.
Well, first of all, Mike, we have to remember to talk about what happened when we first arrived at that location in a place that I'm going to refer to as Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah.
The gates to the place reminded me of Jurassic Park. But we went into an area. We had permission to go into an area, and we went out onto what I guess you could call like a little jetty. It was kind of a crook in the Natchez River, and we were on a piece of land that was pretty much surrounded by the river itself on 3 sides. As we pulled into that location, the moment we stepped out of our vehicles, Mike, would you like to talk about what happened?
Well, yeah, it was. I think there was three cars, 3 vehicles.
Yeah, we had just opened the doors and just gotten out.
And directly across the river, I mean, we were just a matter of 10 or 15 yards from the bank of the river. But on the other opposite bank, there was a huge crashing, thrashing sound that just, it sounded like somebody took a bulldozer and was just plowing through the trees at a high rate of speed.
Yeah, I thought a tree was falling down. I mean, it was.
Yeah, it was so loud. I mean, it startled all of us.
This was when you first arrived.
Exactly. When we got there, it was already dark. We had gone earlier that day, and Todd had been out filming, actually, some other stuff at another location, and we had gone to this property to kind of scout it because we'd never been there before, and the landowner said we could go. So we went in, and in the daylight, even this place, and I think I was on the radio with everybody as we were driving in and said, welcome to Jurassic Park, because this place was, I mean, the tree growth and the vines and the undergrowth and everything was so thick. Even in the daylight, it was dark driving the trail, and you had to go through 2 game fences before you ever got. I think, how long did it take us to go from the main road gate to the river?
Oh, it took about a half an hour, I would think. About 20 minutes to a half an hour to
through this dense, stuff. And
amazing.
When we got to the place that the landowner calls Fish Camp, was a little clearing that he had created to come down and camp out and fish, and so we parked, and I mean, no sooner than we had shut the doors, that had gone off, and we were all kind of looking at each other like, okay, that was something fairly large that just
something huge
just went through these trees on the opposite side, on the opposite bank of the river. Later, we had split in. There was 9 of us, and we split into 3-man teams. And two of the teams, of which I was part of, 2 of the teams that went out away. We had walked back up the little trail that led into the location, and set up 2 different locations away from the camp. And then Todd and Bob Dinsford and Mark Mosley stayed at the fish camp area. And I think, Todd, you had your kids with you that time too.
Yeah,
they were asleep in the Suburban.
They were literally in the vehicle asleep, or in the vehicle next to me. And I actually, I was having trouble adjusting to, being up so late. So I had a spotlight in one hand and a video camera in the other. And I sat down, I said, and I was wearing a fishing jacket that made a lot of noise every time I moved. It was made out of a material that when it rubbed together, it just made a lot of noise. Still, because I'm making too much noise. And so I said, I'm just going to lay down on this table and just be as still and as quiet as I can and just listen and see if I can hear anything. And so I lay down on the table, and the next thing I know, they're waking me up because there's this wood knock happened like what sounded like it was about 20 or 30 feet away. And
actually, Todd was closer to it than the other 2 guys, and closer than the dish that recorded it. It was actually, Todd was between the recorder and the tree knock.
I think it might have been my snoring that attracted it. But it was
yeah, and Mark had to run over and shake him and go, "Hey, dude, did you hear that?" And he was like, "What? Hear what?" And I mean, on the tape, on the audio, it sounds like somebody took a Louisville Slugger and just pounded an oak tree with it. I mean, it was just, it was just really an amazing sound.
That was a single knock or several?
It was a single knock. Now, if you guys recall, I had sent you guys the recordings of the cough sequence and showed you the pictures of the tracks that we found. Okay, the bank where those pictures, the trackway and the tracks were found, is exactly at Fish Camp. That's exactly where we were sitting. It's where we found those tracks. And then the knock was there in the cough sequence, and these were all at different times, different research operations on the same piece of property. So, but Todd was there the first night. He was part of that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's probably going to be my biggest contribution in the field, I'm afraid, is the day that I fell asleep on the picnic table and there was a knock less than 30 feet away from me.
Well, that and the fact that you lost your wallet on the way to Oklahoma.
Oh yeah, we were gonna. You want to go there too, huh? Thanks.
No,
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, we
Mike, I don't know if I'd want to get back out in the woods with Todd. He might want to get a little retribution here.
Yeah, he probably will. No, Todd's a good friend.
On one trip, I left my wallet in Texas and drove to Oklahoma. Realized I didn't have my wallet. Turned around, drove back to Texas. Was told that nobody knew where my wallet was. Told them that there's a reward if anybody finds it. And then on my way back to Oklahoma, I got probably 10 or 15 miles away from where I was headed in Oklahoma, and got the call at wee hours of the morning that they had found my wallet. And of course the cash had been removed, but that was okay with me. Then drove back to Texas, got my wallet, and went back to Oklahoma.
Bless your heart.
So probably racked up somewhere in the neighborhood of about 800 miles.
Yeah.
A few hours.
Yeah, we were kind of concerned because he hadn't showed up and didn't know the whole story until he did show up, and that was it was quite fortuitous that he he talked about the level of dedication that we have. Brother, let me tell you, the level of dedication you showed that night in actually driving from Texas to Oklahoma 4 different times in one night just to get you were determined to film whatever it was you could film. That's a level of dedication that I think is way beyond what we
when you're carrying snacks and sodas out to your car, the one thing you got to remember is put your wallet back in your hip pocket. Don't set it down on top of the gas pump while you unlock your door.
I know how you feel. When I was going to college, I got a grant. And the day that I got my grant and cashed it, I had like $600 in cash in my wallet. Several of my friends had stopped at a restaurant to eat, so I dropped in there to get something to eat, sit down and talk with them for a while. So I got up and went to the restroom. And when it came time to pay for the food, I reached in my back pocket and my wallet was gone. I went back in the restroom, and there was my wallet laying in the floor. Everything was in it except the money.
Oh, no.
Man, that was one of the worst days of my life.
Yeah.
Things that happen. But there's a lot of hijinks that occur, during all this stuff that are just remarkable and out there. But we've had some very, very interesting things happen. Mike was actually, there was an intimidation episode with Mike at one point on that same piece of property, a little ways away from where fish camp was. And
what happened, Mike? If you don't mind telling us about it.
No, it was a daylight. We were scouting the area for anything, tree breaks or tracks or just whatever, just looking for evidence. And we had gone through a low area. It was dry at that time, but you could tell where it's kind of a slough area, but it hadn't rained in a while, and it was dry. So we walked through it, and we come up to the river at a different location. And I think it was Scott Kessler and Mark Mosley were standing there, and I said, well, I'm going to go down to the riverbank and kind of look and see. And as I got down the riverbank, I could see that there was an opening downriver, kind of a cliff, and there was an opening. So I said, I'm going to check this out, and walked down. And I walked down the riverbank and come up to this little cliff, and it was kind of steep, but it's negotiable. So I walked up, and there was a little open area there, pretty clear, and you could see where people had been there at some time in the past, had fishing and stuff like that. And there was a path that went south, and I went down it, and there's this hill that went up in it, and I walked past it, and I was on my way back, and I was on the radio telling the guys, hey, I'm going to look up this hill. There's a tree stand up there. And I started to go up this hill, and on one side of the trail was kind of like hardwoods, and it was really strange because the opposite side of the trail was it's like a pine grove.
Mm-hmm.
And I started up this hill, and in that pine grove, or from the pine grove, came a very low, menacing growl, howl, whatever you want to call it, at me. And it continued on for several seconds. I mean, it was like, 10, 12 seconds long. And I started to move again and did it again. And I said, and all I had with me was a stick. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe I need to leave because I don't have anything to protect myself. So I hightailed it back to the guys, and as it would be, that very location, that hill where I was growled at, was the same hill where we captured the cough sequence recording several months later. So, but yeah, we've had some.
You got too close to the. You got too close to the nesting area. You got too close to the.
Yeah, they were bedded down for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, or something, and.
Sentinel intercepted you.
Yeah, a little sentry there decided to let me know I was getting too close, and.
If you read the Tom Powell book, The Locals.
Yeah.
Fantastic book, and I know he's coming up on a future show.
Yes, he is, on May 31st.
A guy I want to meet for sure. I agree.
He'll be at the Whole Nubby conference, guys. So.
Oh yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what you've written.
We want to tell everyone about the Whole Nubby conference. What date is that, Mike?
October 2nd and 3rd, first weekend in October. Honobia, Oklahoma. And if you look at the map, and try to pronounce it phonetically, it looks like it says Honobia.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, the locals will let you know that it's pronounced Honubby.
That's how they tell if you're from out of town.
Yeah, that's exactly how they tell.
But in that book, actually, in Tom Powell's book, The Locals, he mentions the theory of how they keep a sentinel, or a day watcher, or a sentry, if you will. Yeah, and my own personal experiences.
Myself, yes.
Yeah, my own experiences with the Texla research group and Mike and them, it pretty much confirms that idea for me, because it tends to be, it's usually when you arrive on the scene and you exit your vehicle, there tends to be some kind of activity that happens immediately. And it's almost like it's almost like you're dealing with a sentry or a sentinel, a guard, who is warning the others that the humans have gotten out of their vehicle.
What I'm wondering, though, about that is that, because we're dealing in the same area where I research, okay, in East Texas. I've researched in East Texas for 8 years. And I've noticed it here more in this part of the country than anywhere else. I've been in Mississippi. I've been in Oklahoma. It seems to be more of a standard thing in this part of the country, more noticeable. Let me put it that way. They make themselves known more often here than if the same thing is going on in like Oklahoma or Mississippi and other states. I've noticed it more here in East Texas. So I'm wondering if it's a regional behavior.
Yeah.
What do y'all think about that?
That is definitely a possibility, but because I only really have the experience of the southern area, the Arklatex and Oklahoma, to go by. And I don't know, it just seems to be my experience that in the majority of cases where we're in territory where there is, suspected activity, where there have been sightings, when we all stop our vehicles and exit our vehicles, there's almost immediately some kind of wood knock or some kind of vocalization. And I don't know, that indicates to me that they're warning each other.
Exactly.
That that one of them is telling the rest of them, okay, the humans have gotten out of their vehicles, because we don't pose a threat to them really while we're in our vehicles, because they know where we are.
Mm-hmm.
But once we exit our vehicles, it's clear that we intend to penetrate their domain, and that they need to be more watchful, because they know that as long as we're in our vehicles, we're just going to pass right on through.
Well, hey, guys, I'm going to get off here, let somebody else call in. I just wanted to call in and razz my friend a little bit. And
thanks,
tell him
Mike. Appreciate that.
Mike, thanks for calling in.
Hey, no, it's my pleasure as always, guys. And to tell Todd what a great show it's. He had no reason to be nervous or anything.
No,
he did a great job, and I'll get off the phone now. But Todd, you might want to talk about the legend of the tent experience in Sherburne. The last time we were all together. So that's the big tarp. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tarp, yeah.
Yeah, we had a great time in Sherburne. Actually,
Hi, thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thank God for Lonnie Rabelais. That's all I got to say.
Well, let's hear about it while Mike's still on the phone.
He's off now. He's listening.
Oh, is he? Oh,
we had this whole thing planned out, and we went down to the Sherburne Wildlife Management area, down in the southern part of Louisiana, and it rained. Oh God, it rained, and then it rained some more, and rained again, and so fortunately for us, Lonnie, who does a lot of work with various types of productions, stage, and things of that nature, has acquired somehow a gigantic tarp.
Mm-hmm.
And
when you speak of gigantic, how big are you talking about?
It's 50 or 60 feet long, probably.
Oh my gosh!
40 feet across. He made this huge, I guess for lack of a lodge with it, that we all were able to put our equipment under and stay dry in. And true to form, as most of these expeditions go, we didn't have a lot of things happen during the first few days, and then, like the last night we're there, some things did occur. We all packed up in our vehicles to go out and do some drive-arounds. Basically just driving around with our headlights on through the trails of the Sherburne Wildlife Management area, and video cameras running, hoping that we would get an eye shine, or maybe if we're fortunate enough to even get something crossing, because that was in fact what had been reported in that area. So we split up into a couple of different teams and did that, and a few people stayed behind in camp. And as soon as we got in our vehicles and left the camp, there was activity around the camp. There were vocalizations and things of that nature around the camp. You could tell that something was signaling to something else on either side of the camp.
How many people were left at camp? I'm curious. About three? About 3 or 4?
I would say, yeah, probably 2 or 3, or maybe as many as 4. But it was interesting that once we were divided, they became more, more aggressive. Actually, the people that stayed behind in camp actually got the treat that night. And for all of our hard work, Bruce Dinsford and myself were in my little 4-wheel drive, and for all of our bouncing around and driving through the pig trails, we got a really nice video of a possum. And that was about it. But meanwhile, the folks back at camp were having a pretty interesting time.
Your activity.
Oh yeah, and then the next morning, when we actually everyone packed up and we were all leaving, we started getting some vocalizations, some very bizarre vocalizations. One sounded kind of like a maniacal scream or laugh or something, just coming from.
Wow. And
Bigfoot.
Nobody was recording, I'll bet, man. They all had everything.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes. I didn't get anything on my camera.
That's called the Bigfoot curse. That's the Bigfoot curse right there.
Yeah, it's always that way. It always happens when you're not ready for it. As long as you're ready, it's not going to happen. But as soon as you're like, okay, show's over, and it's when you're walking away usually is when something happens. And it's a shame, but that's usually the way it goes, and that's okay. But we know they're out there, and they know that we're out there, and it's quite interesting. And we also had a tent that was apparently, possibly interfered with. We had one tent that was off away from the other tents that no one was in. When we came back, it appeared that something had pulled the fly back. It was almost as though something wanted to look inside the tent to see
what was in there.
So there was a little interesting activity down there, even in all that rain, which actually would have acted as very good cover for anything that wanted to approach our camp.
They'll belly crawl in there.
Oh, yeah.
They'll belly crawl right up to you and be 3 feet away from you, and they right in the edge of your campsite, and you never know they're there.
I have no doubt that has happened. I have no doubt that they are certainly capable of doing that, and I believe it happens all the time. I believe there's so many people that have had a Sasquatch looking at them while they were asleep and never even knew it. I believe people have been asleep in their tent or in their car or whatever, they're spending the night in, and they probably had Sasquatch look right through the window and watch them sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are the kinds of things that, people
or grab your foot through the tent wall.
Oh, yeah. But to me, it's very telling that, for the most part, you don't, and that's one thing I explained to my kids to get them to understand was, at first they were like scared, do we have to worry about Sasquatch? And, are they going to do this? It's like, you know what, kids, they're not going to hurt us. I'm more concerned when I'm in the woods. I'm more concerned about cougars, bears, rattlesnakes. I'm not concerned the Sasquatch is going to hurt me because
other humans.
Yeah, I'm not going to take other humans are a big problem.
I've never had, I've had some encounters that scared the heck out of me, but in retrospect, I wasn't harmed. I don't feel any fear.
And I think that's exactly the purpose.
About a year ago, December, I would come face to face with one, and I never felt fear, not one bit. It was I felt peace. I'd be, how'd you do that? He was not very far away from me at all. I was looking at him. He was looking at me. Personally, if someone asked me, are they dangerous? I would have to say it just depends on the circumstances. If you're in an area where they have young, you get them cornered up.
I agree with that 100%.
They're going to react.
It's all based on your actions. If you're out there, because chances are when you see one, 9 times out of 10 they already know you're there. And
absolutely.
The 1 out of 10 times that you see one that didn't know you were there is because it made a mistake and it didn't notice you were there and you surprised it. And I think that if you do something to put yourself in danger, if you show yourself to be in imminent danger to them, then you may have a problem. But if you demonstrate that you're not going to hurt them, they're probably not going to hurt you. At most, they're going to escort you out of the forest. They're going to escort you out of their territory.
Exactly.
I think for the most part they don't want, especially if you're a male. I think they see you as more of a threat. I think being female is actually a huge advantage.
It is a huge advantage because we have a non-threatening posture to begin with. Also, women are generally not hunters. A lot of it is body language, but it is more than just body language. It's a mentality.
The Sasquatch is going to notice if you're male or female, and that's going to factor greatly into whether or not it views you as a threat, or whether or not it views you as, with interest or with, caution.
Mhm.
And that's just my, and all these things are just my opinions and my theories, but
take it from me as a woman that has been out there many, many, many times. I have been followed. I've actually had them follow me all the way home. I've had a lot of experiences out there with them, and I didn't necessarily all the time see one, but I knew they were there. I could smell them. I could hear them, the way my dogs were acting. Just everything. I knew I was being followed and or watched. I never, I can't say I didn't always feel a little uncomfortable. Sometimes I did feel a little outnumbered. There was more than one. But I felt like I was going to be able to make it home without anything happening to me. And I would try very hard not to feel a panic. Within the years, I eventually got to the point where I was unconcerned. But it took me a while to get to that point where I was no longer afraid.
I think that's one of the main points that I would like to make. Is I think it's. I know there are people who are fully intend to hunt and kill.
Yes.
One of these creatures to prove that it's real, and all I can say is I think if you're in the forest and you see one of these creatures presents itself to you, makes itself visible, you better be careful about shooting it, because if it's showing itself to you, they've got your number, baby.
Uh-huh.
They got you surrounded. They're probably within striking distance. They could probably take you out, because that's the only time they're going to play the game they're always going to play the game so it's to their advantage. Unless it's made a mistake and allowed you to see it without intentionally. If it's intentionally stepped out into the trail in front of you and you're carrying a weapon, I think the last thing in the world you should do is try to use that weapon, because I think that if you see one, then there's probably more than one around you. And it's the ones you don't see that you need to watch out for if you're going to try anything. And I think that is... I think that's just an important thing to remember, is that, if you don't pose an imminent threat to them, I really don't think you're in any danger. If you don't take the posture of, well, I'm gonna attack you, or I'm gonna shoot you, I think if you take that posture of, oh, I'm just here, I'm not here to hurt anybody, and if I have a gun, it's to fend off hogs or cougars or whatever. It's not a game I'd want to play. It's not a game that I'd want to play of going up against one of these creatures in its own territory. Because first of all, I think that's a terribly sad thing.
I agree.
And I'm sure that one day it will happen, and it's going to be a sad day for me.
Well, I've read a lot of reports, mostly in Texas. 40% of our sightings here in Texas have been hunters. The majority of them, when they're out there, way out there, and they encounter one, the majority of them may raise a gun towards it, but they can't shoot. Because they're not sure what they are shooting.
That's exactly what happens, in a lot of occasions, is once most hunters are pretty responsible individuals. And most hunters are not going to take a shot at anything they cannot clearly and positively identify.
Yes.
Almost everyone that I know who is a prolific hunter is that way about it. They are not going to pull that trigger until they know what they're shooting at, and it is, in fact, what they intend to shoot at. And that is such a great thing, because it could very easily be, different.
You think about it, you've also heard stories of retaliation. Now, a lot of these stories speculative about if that really occurred or not, but, one was shot. I read several reports here in Texas about one actually being shot, and then they would come back and find their camp destroyed.
Oh, yeah, they're going to get you back.
Yeah. Yes.
One way or the other. And
well, that's a minor thing compared to what they could do to you. That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. But they just want to show you who the boss is. And I actually have met and become friends with an individual who was a hunter for a very long time and didn't believe that these creatures existed, thought it was all a bunch of hooey, until the day that he was in the woods and wearing a ghillie suit and walked past a spot in some tall grass near the edge of some woods, and saw movement out of the corner of his eye, thought he was looking at a hog, turned around, raised his rifle, and found himself face to face with a large, an older, what appeared to be an older male with a sort of a pot belly, and he said it had the softest, most beautiful brown eyes that he simply could not take a shot at. As a matter of fact, he was so stunned by what he was looking at that he just sort of stood there in awe, and it turned and walked away and moved a branch out of its way, and it was the act of the branch like bouncing back from being moved that actually got him to shake himself into a state where he could think about what he's going to do next.
Wow.
And this guy who was, I've been in the woods personally, have seen his tracking skills and just an amazing tracker and hunter. A man named Van Hall, and he's quite an amazing individual, and he's a very fortunate man to have had the kind of encounter that he had at quite a close range. Range, I'd say, probably about 60 yards or so.
Well, Todd, we are winding down to the end of the show. It went fast, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Time flies. Let's watch.
We want to thank you for coming on, and we'd like to have you on again this summer if you'll be willing to come back.
Sure, I would be more than willing to come back. Just let me know, and we'll try to get it scheduled.
Okay. Anyway, everyone out there, next week we are having Wild Man of the Navidad. We've got Dwayne Graves and Justin Meeks, the co-directors, going to be on the show to talk about the movie. Thank you so much, Todd, for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Todd.
Anytime.
Pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure speaking to you folks, too.
Bye, Todd. Thanks.
Bye.